What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bonfire. This is match day 2 Bonfire. We are 2 weeks into the MLS season, and there's a lot going on in just 2 games. My name is Matt, and I am honored to be one of your hosts today. And today I am joined with an all-star cast. The whole Bonfire crew is here, which includes the great Floridian himself, DJ. DJ, how are you?
I just realized Peter Novak's down here in Florida, isn't he?
Could be. Maybe he's your next door neighbor this whole time.
He's at FC Naples. I need to buy him a pizza.
Maybe, never mind. That's definitely not your neighbor. Well, it's good to see you, and I'm glad you stuck that little fun fact in there. He's over at FC Naples. Super cool. Alongside him, we have, of course, the pole with the goal, Mr. Allen. Allen, how we doing?
I wore 6 layers last night, and I did not learn my mistake from Columbus, and I did not double up on socks, so my toes were freezing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys can't see what Allen looks like right now, but he looks like he didn't go to bed, and he just got back from Soldier Field like 2 minutes ago. He has sweatshirt on, jerseys on, full head covering on. He's ready. He's ready for round 2 at Soldier Field. So, my goodness.
He looks like a Call of Duty Chicago Fire player.
Yeah. He's locked in. He's ready for the fire season.
He's ready. I'm so ready. And we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, Alan. And of course, rounding out the cast, we have the legendary Sing_Electric himself, Tim Hutzi. Tim, how are you?
Good. I mean, I was warm because I was in the press box for most of it. I talked to staff that were not, and they were freezing. It was the second coldest game, home game in Fire history after that second game of the season against FCC a couple years ago. Coldest, home opener for that reason. And
Yeah, that FCC game was noticeably colder than last night. And last night, my lips turned purple, and they still feel purple, if I'm honest. So glad to know that you were nice and warm. And obviously, DJ was nice and warm, too, down there in Florida as well. But Alan and I did enough suffering for the entire group. But it's good to be back, the 4 of us, talking a really intense DC versus Fire game. Before we get to that, there is a little news in Chicago Fireland since the last time we filmed the Bonfire. Since we filmed last time, MLS have published their current rosters, which show all the roster designations of all of our players. And there's 2 interesting notes that came out of it that we didn't really know previously. Number 1, Wisconsin Badgers legend Dean Bolts on a contract through 2027, which we didn't have that information. And right now he's kind of sitting on the 3rd string, flirting with Fire 2 at this point. But we have him for 3 years, and we'll see if he's able to grow and learn. And also Chase Gasper, currently 2nd on the depth list at left back behind his fellow bald man, Andrew Gutman, was listed as unavailable due to injury, which is an interesting slot. And we don't really know what's going on with Chase Gasper. I'm sure we'll find out as the season progresses. But what we're really here for, boys, is to talk.
It's a knee injury that he sustained before preseason when he was, I'll just say, kind of training on his own, which is normal to do that. I think that there were parts of this that were a little unusual, but it's not a season-ending injury. It is it's kind of a different designation that isn't in the public roster rules. So that's always fun when we find out about things that are not written down anywhere. But it's listed as a 6-week injury. I'd be surprised if he was back in 6 weeks. Not an SEI, just for what that's worth.
So you're saying that MLS just has a pocketbook full of secret roster designations that we learn new ones every single year?
That's the way all these roster rules. It's the most frustrating thing about it because it's like they publish roster rules and they say like there's a webpage that is like these are the roster rules and regulations, and then things happen that are not covered in them. They never were intended to be the whole thing. It's kind of like more like a guide around them, but I don't understand the point of publishing like some of the roster rules, right? Like if you were like learning how to drive and they're like, here's some of the rules of the road. And then like you just get pulled over by the cops and like you broke this law and you're like, what law? And they're like, it's not written down. Like that would just be an insane situation to be in. And that's kind of the way
I've known about it.
Yep. We like these things just come up and we sort of like learn as we're going. But that designation saves the Fire a little bit of salary cap space now that Gasper has been moved just for salary cap reasons, nothing else. It doesn't say anything about his role in the team changing from the supplemental roster to the senior roster.
It's just to keep you on your toes, Tim.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, Alex Calabrese, just if you're confused about any of this, as we all, I think, are, but to help clear up as much as we possibly can, Alex Calabrese has a piece that came out just before the start of the season about how the Fire got to cap and roster compliance This kind of stuff is covered there. He does a great job talking to people that actually do this for a living and getting the data so that we can present like actual fact-based information as opposed to just like speculation from whoever about like, oh, this is what this means. Better to have facts.
And hopefully Gasper can come back and at least play some of this season because he's out of contract after this year, and it would really suck to see 2 players retire this offseason instead of just 1.
Yeah.
It's true. And we need more bald. We love bald at Chicago Fire. Rock on. Yeah, Alex does a great job of getting all those roster designations in place. And we're grateful for that graphic that is now being circulated around all of MLS that has like all of the DPs and all that stuff is really good work. So
yeah, I
awesome
shared
news.
the template with a couple of people. There's now versions for Kansas City, FC Dallas, and
Houston
probably more
too, I
coming
think.
out. So that's it just helps clarify things. I love the way that the league presents it too, and it's good that they're doing that. But again, there's things that we can cover that like the league isn't releasing for every team that give us a little more subtlety with those things, and I think that's the utility of it at this point.
Absolutely.
MLS
Good work.
roster rules.
Yeah, it's nuts. DC Chicago, home opener, Chicago Fire 2025. All 4 of us here were in 4 very different spots. Obviously, Tim was in the press box. DJ was probably sitting on his couch in Florida. Alan was front row in the supporter section. I was kind of 7 rows behind him. But there's a lot to talk about. And I think that the natural first place to start is everything that happened beforehand and everything that's been going on with the injuries at this club. Big picture, in case you didn't see the game or haven't checked the score, the Fire drew 2-2. Against an okay DC United team in a very injury-laden game, specifically for the Fire. In general, there were 8 players unavailable going into the game. 4 or 5 of those, which we would consider to be key players within the organization, arguably starters or fringe starters. 6 of those were injuries. So the Kwame, and then of course the Guti suspension, and Chris Mueller, who had a second baby with his wife. So congratulations to him on behalf of everyone here. Adding on to that, you get into warmups, and Carlos Turan, who was going to slot there next to Jack Elliott, goes down with injury, which gives Sam Rogers his first career MLS start of the season. So a great opportunity for him to slot in there. But Tim, do we know more about this Carlos Turan injury?
We don't. We asked Greg Berhalter about it after the game, and he just said it was a tweak or something like that. It doesn't seem like. I mean, you wouldn't expect that the Fire would have more information, right? Like they're not going to say the results of an MRI or anything, 2 hours after the game started. So we should find out more in the coming days. Hopefully it's not a long-term injury because obviously the Fire's infirmary is pretty full at the moment.
100%. 9 players unavailable going into FC Dallas, which we'll talk about in a bit, would be very difficult, but hopefully we get some back in the first place. Interestingly, we talked a lot about what the midfield's going to look like going into this game, and Berhalter ended up going the Fire 2 route with Sam Williams, getting his first career Chicago Fire MLS start or first career MLS start in general. Did he ever get a first team appearance with the Red Bulls?
He did not. He played for the Red Bulls 2 back when they were in USL.
Okay. So first ever career MLS start. Played pretty well. We'll talk about him for sure. And then the other CF2 loanee, Harold Osorio, makes his debut in the last minute, swapping out for Acosta, which I know some of us have feelings about. But overall, I want to start off all the injuries, the tactics, the formations. They're not ideal, but I want to hear what you guys thought of when you saw that lineup. What was the feelings, the strategy, overall thoughts? And I'd love to start with Tim.
Necessity is kind of the mother of invention. I think in a way it was good to see Sergio Orhel get the start again for confidence reasons as much as anything else. He made some good plays that I think was obscured in the last game just based on a couple of mistakes that he made around it. But, interesting, I think, going with a flat 3 midfield like he did last game. But this time, like last game, we had Guti in the middle kind of playing higher up than his 2 midfield partners. I thought Zinkernagel was going to slot into a similar position, and then Omari Glasgow would have gotten his first MLS start. That's not what we saw. What we saw instead was Kellen Acosta, who I think the defensive part of his game is a much stronger aspect of what he brings to the table than the offensive aspect. Was playing at the same place on the field. It was a different role and a different game, and I as we go through this, I think that the midfield was the biggest issue for the team playing the way that they did, and I think that part of that is just playing guys that far out of position. It didn't feel as much like the kind of ball that I think Berhalter wants the team to play because of those midfield selections.
Yeah, it's tough at the end of the day when you don't have key midfielders. I mean, it's Pineda couldn't start, Kwame's out, Guti's out, and you're calling up guys from CF2 on match day 2.
Right, and other than Kwame and Guti and Kwame, I think are the two guys that you think would have the most sort of going forward, alongside maybe Acosta and Kwame may be pretty close, but not having either of them, you're looking at like third choice options, which again is why I was a little surprised that Zinkernagel didn't do it. I think the idea was a lot of Berhalter's system runs through the wings, and I think that he wanted to make sure that part of the game was working as well and as naturally as possible. So rather than take something that you think is going to work out and put it somewhere else, you just sort of go with a sort of like B- or C+ choice in the midfield. Like Acosta is the only regular starter that was there, rather than trying to go with like one non-starter in every position group.
Yeah, absolutely. DJ, I see you're getting shaky over there, and I want to give you the opportunity to answer this. Do you think Berhalter there's several different routes they could have gone. The Zinkernagel 10 route, Amari on the wing, Cassano or Osorio playing the 10 with Sergio Orahel and Acosta behind him. Did Berhalter get it right with Sam Williams? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, okay? If Pineda was healthier, 100%, you would have had Pineda, Acosta, and Orahel. But Pineda's still not healthy. He's still coming back from the injury. And that's the same problem you have with Zinkernagel and Kuipers, and honestly, still the same problem you have with Rodgers. That's part of why I think he didn't start first game, too. But because of the injuries, because you're going to have to substitute him out anyway, it just kind of made sense to say, okay, we'll go with Williams, give Williams a start. It's early season. We still got to build this stuff up. We're still building back. Who knows what transfers are going to be made, type of thing. So I think Williams starting was a good idea. I think leaving Zinkernagel on the wing, getting more experience on the wing where he'll be playing the entire season, and allowing him to just be like, okay, when the time comes, we'll pull you out, put Glasgow in, because that's a pretty good sub out for a young, really quick winger versus having him start the entire game, risk another injury, and say, well, I guess we're screwed.
Absolutely. Alan, when you saw Sam Williams in that starting lineup, a guy that, I think most of us here, maybe Tim and DJ, they both have just like crazy ball knowledge, didn't know that well. What was going through your head knowing Berhalter's system? And ultimately, do you think it was the right route to go?
All I know is that injuries are running rampant through this club. The good thing we have that new performance center now, so hopefully that helps speed up some of the process when it comes to injuries. Like mentioned, that Berhalter likes to play through the wings. I think it worked out for the most part, especially with the front three that we have in Zinkernagel, Kuipers, and Bamba. For me, it was what it was, essentially, because once again, just injuries ravaging through this club. For now, it's game 2, so it's not going to be what it should be for now. And I think Berhalter made the best of what it was, essentially.
I think the other interesting thing outside of Sam Williams was Harold Osorio coming in. And what was it? It felt like the 93rd minute almost. And
it was deep. And it was into that second half stoppage time and not by a little bit.
Yeah, it was like 94th minute. It was crazy. I got to ask the crew. Obviously, Osorio and Sam Williams are two guys that can only play limited amounts of time for the Fire, given that they are on CF2 contracts. Did you feel that bringing in a Harold Osorio at that point in time when you're up 2-1, 2 minutes left defending a lead, was the right call, or would you have done it differently? Not that we know better ball than Berhalter. It just felt like an interesting decision coming from Triple G.
I was confused by the choice.
I will say I would understand the decision better if it wasn't for Acosta. Like, Acosta getting subbed out. There are situations where, I can understand, but Acosta was the captain. He's like your big defensive player in the midfield. and you sub him out for an offensive midfielder, unless there was a knock or something and they just said, hey, Acosta, come on out. That way we don't risk any more. I would have rather seen Osorio come on for Bamba or come on for Barlow because, like, we need to defend. We need more bodies. But even then,
Yeah, I mean, Barlow himself was the substitute, so hopefully, his legs would have been fresh. But I get the point, and it's also just an interesting choice because he now only has one more MLS appearance he can make unless the team gives him a first team deal, which is just mathematically not going to happen given some of the details of his contract and the salary cap hit that it would take the Fire to do it. So it was kind of puzzling to me. Maybe it was something that in some way helps with the potential movement if he has the senior team appearance, but then it's just a curious way to do it. But from an on-pitch perspective, you take off an experienced defender when you're seeing out a first half lead in stoppage time. I mean, was Kellen really that gassed to the point that he couldn't go on for another 180 seconds? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's your
Unless-
captain. He better
Unless-
be able to go 180 more seconds if he needs to at the end of the day.
unless there's a hidden roster rule.
Nah, yeah, but honestly, it's sort of echo like taking out an incredibly experienced player. The only time I would see that is if you were comfortably in the lead, and with the way the Fire were barely holding on to the game, it didn't make entirely too much sense for me. And lo and behold, I mean, yeah, what happened at the very end happened, but it was, it was just Chicago going to Chicago essentially. And yeah, it didn't make too much sense.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that we were holding a lead at the end of the game, considering 4 minutes in, we went down 1 goal. And I just want to spend a few minutes touching on that because compared to the Columbus game, where the first 20 minutes we came out flying, the boys came out a little flat in the first half against DC. 4 minutes in, Christian Benteke takes advantage of Sam Rogers in his first MLS appearance, who got caught ball watching and staked it under Brady. Now, some could say that Brady should have done a better job there, but I'm not going to criticize Brady after his second half performance. That was ultimately mitigated by the fact that Hugo Kuipers scored off a set piece, which is something that we don't see a lot often in this fan base. And it stand after a few minutes of VAR checking. And I feel like every single goal that we score is VAR checking. In general,
well, they all are checked in the league, right? Like every single goal is checked before play continues. Now, the VAR from where they are in, ironically, the Dallas area, given what we're talking about, they'll say like everything looks good or something like that, and it can be a quick check. But if there's something they're looking at, they will let the head referee know, and not to resume play until they've looked at something, and they may say, okay, this is good. Or if it's really close, they'll say, can you come to the monitor, have a look at this or something.
I thought that one was interesting, though, because after looking at the replay, I wasn't 100% sure what they were checking in the first place. Does anyone have a concept of what that extended VAR
They were
check
looking for an offside. They were looking for an offside, just given the number of players in the box. Yeah, and it was ruled that
Bamba was like right up against DC's goalkeeper, and that was what they were checking.
Yeah.
If he was
and the
outside,
goal was
he
scored
wasn't.
from just inches in. But going back to the first DC goal for a second, if we can.
Yeah.
It's the kind of goal that I think DC wants to play. I don't remember who took the pass, but they played a pass from inside their own half that made it to Gabriel Pirani, about halfway through the Fire's half of the pitch, like 3/4 of the way through the pitch, I guess, overall. And Pirani's able to carry it up basically unimpeded. And he gets a cross off to Benteke, who's just outside of the box, like the 6-yard box. But I mean, in the pin, like in the box, like closer than the penalty spot, I think, if my memory serves. And that's the kind of goal that they want to score. Like they just get past teams and get it across into Benteke and just let Benteke's head do the rest. This was actually a goal off his right foot, so it wasn't a header, but it's the same kind of a play. And I don't, we talked about the midfield selection a little bit and what they were able to give going forward and how I think that was an issue. I think that was an issue here too, because none of them, like nobody, like along the Fire's lines, the forwards a little bit you could maybe make a couple excuses for, but none of the midfielders were anywhere near that pass or anywhere near Pirani impeding him in any way. And neither was I believe it was Dean on that side able to stop him, or either of the center backs, who really probably were rightfully focused on Benteke. But you just can't be that simple to play through and expect to get a clean sheet against a team with Benteke on it. Like, it just is not going to work out for you.
Yeah, and I think 4 minutes into the game, everyone knew that Christian Benteke, oh my God, I can't speak, was their biggest threat. He scores a goal, and that was a moment for the fans, at least, and I'm glad it wasn't for the players, where it felt very deflated. I know Alan and I were in the section. We felt the deflation going on. So to see that response from the boys in the first half, going into the first half tied, was a nice change of pace, because we've seen in the past, under the last few administrations of coaches, teams kind of, our fire teams kind of keep their heads down and not be able to respond, honestly, for the majority of the game after going down 1-0. So positive change of pace, actually going into halftime, knotted up 1-1.
So do you want to talk about the fire goal for a quick minute there? Or
yeah, 100%. Yeah, Hugo Kuipers scored off a set piece. Set piece. Yep. You heard me correctly. Set piece, something I don't even know the last time we scored off a set piece. Stood after a few minutes of, thank you, Tim, for clarifying, the offsides VAR checking to knot the game up at 1-1. Great to see him get on the score sheet.
And Jack Elliott also got a head on that to get it to Kuipers. And Zinkernagel got his first assist. It's an MLS assist. So I asked him about it after the game, because I'm like, so, talking about things that are different in the league, you got an assist on that corner that made it to the Jack Elliott's head, that then made it to Hugo Kuipers, for a goal. So that's not something that would count in pretty much any other league in the world, or maybe every other league in the world other than MLS Next Pro, come to think of it. But yeah, it was refreshing to see, I think, a set piece result in something for the Fire. It's not something we saw enough of last year. One of the curious things about the Berhalter staff is the one offensive, Zach Thornton is still the Fire's goalkeeper coach. But other than that, the only other actual assistant coach level holdover from previous eras was Ryan Needs, the British set piece coach the team brought in last year. And I thought that was a little curious, just given that the team didn't really perform on set pieces last year. And now I think we're seeing a little bit more of what Ryan Needs is able to coach into the team with some better pieces around. Because I thought Zinkernagel wasn't great with this service, but I thought it was more than serviceable enough, as obviously it resulted in a goal, right?
Yeah, and as an astute Aston Villa fan, who have a very notable set piece coach and are second in the Premier League and set pieces, I find great value in bringing in a coach who can provide those opportunities, even after poor service, like you mentioned, from Zinkernagel. So great to see that goal came in. Alan, Hugo Kuipers' goal, how'd that one make you feel?
I also feeling we were just bouncing. I mean, we were excited, Once again, feeling your lungs fill with the red smoke that goes off near the supporter section. I mean, there's no greater feeling about it. And then just everyone chanting fire, vamos la máquina roja. So it was a great feeling nonetheless, honestly. And it was great because usually I'm so preoccupied by playing the saxophone, trying to keep the supporter section bumping, but seeing it was a set piece, I was like, all right, I'll turn around and see what happens. And I saw the ball hit the back of the net and I was like, yay.
DJ, would you say that going into halftime 1-1 was a success given the early goal, or did you want more?
Yep. Listen, the fact of the matter is the Fire started the game with a makeshift back line that took some time to gel together. And I said this before we started the podcast, but I feel bad for Sam Rogers because he was not expecting to start today. He gets thrust into the game, and who's your first person you're marking today? Oh, nobody major, just the Golden Boot winner, the guy that's been to 2 Euros, one of the big Belgian strikers, no one major. But the fact that the Fire
it's a tough assignment anytime that happens.
Was good.
Yeah. And I think you did a pretty good job in the first half, all things considered. I think one issue that the team had was really more finding ways to stretch the field. And I think that Jack Elliott is kind of more responsible for doing that, just given his ability to play on the ball than what was being asked of Sam Rogers. I think they realized that as high as DC was pressing, there was kind of space in behind, and Zinkernagel said that's what sort of made the difference later in that half. And I think that once they figured that out, and especially once they tied it up, it's like every reason to think that they could get a win, I think, going into the second half.
Yeah, in the second half, they came out flying. They looked pretty good, couple chances pretty quickly, and then come the 70th minute, and it feels like deja vu all over again, right behind the supporter section. A corner coming in, I believe it was Zinkernagel again, Kuipers right at the back post, almost an identical corner kick to his first one, minus the whole Jack Elliott getting ahead on it. That was merely the only exception. Boys go up 2-1 on 2 set-piece goals, 1 game. Hugo getting on the board twice, I think overall is incredible for the morale of this team, incredible for him. Obviously, he hasn't been match fit for a while. Yes, he got subbed off immediately after by Tom Barlow, which I thought was really funny, even though Tom Barlow had been preparing to come into the game. 70 minutes in, the boys are up 2-1. How'd that make us feel?
Yay.
Extremely excellent. It's rare to see the Fire actually come back and hold a lead at all. So the fact that they got the lead, and it wasn't just that they got the lead, it was they went down early. Too many times they would deflate the entire game, but they actually kind of said, okay, we're down, but you know what, screw it. We're going to play this game as well as we can.
Amen. I say
and
that.
That goal came right when the Fire had really felt like they were taking control of the game. The field tilt, which I think we'll talk about at the end a little bit, but was leaning, in favor of DC for the entire match, but the Fire were starting to get more of it back leading up to that goal. So even though it came off a set piece and not open play, we just talked about how the Fire weren't getting set piece goals in previous seasons. And so now it's like we finally are seeing that, which is cool. I think that, it would have been good to see another goal in open play, like the absolute beauties that Bamba set up for Guti last game. But you get the goals how they can come. And, I don't know how you guys felt, but after that goal, I think previous years you wouldn't have felt confident that the Fire had any real chances of holding on to that score, right? Like you'd thought maybe they can get a win, but like if they don't get the next goal, who knows? Or even if they did get the next goal, they could come back. And it felt comfortable, I think, to a lot of us watching, at least in the press box.
Yeah, it did feel comfortable. Like DJ mentioned, it was really nice to watch them come back from a lead and take a pretty resounding 2-1 lead. That being said, I felt like the last probably like 18 minutes of play kind of started creeping back into the territory of what we've been accustomed to with the Fire, of sitting back in their half and letting the team come at them. This made me a little nervous to the point where after the 90th minute, I looked at the people around me and I go, there's no way the Fire are going to win this game. It started to creepy, be uncomfortable. That came
and I think part of that, though, is dealing with the players that are available on each team's bench. Subs started happening. I guess the first one was DC had some subs in like the 60th minute, but the Fire started subs around the 75th, a few minutes before, a few minutes after. And you were dealing with people that were not anything close to like first choice on the Fire side. Tom Barlow's the backup striker. I think that he will continue to get minutes. I think Omari had a pretty good game, but Maury Pineda is not close to full fitness. So him coming on for Sam Williams, I think, is just saying that like it seemed like Williams was kind of reaching a point where you couldn't rely on as much anymore, at least in Greg Berhalter's estimation. And Sergio Orahel, I thought had a more stable game than he did last time, but he was starting to fade. And I think just with his size, even though he was bulked up, he was struggling with the physicality and the intensity of DC's press. And in the end, I feel like the DC bench had just more difference makers on it than the Fire bench did. Because they brought on Jacob Morel, who we're going to talk about in a second.
I don't want to hear that name, Tim, ever again.
I know that's a perfectly valid point of view.
Like you mentioned, it felt like what's it called? A slippery slope, a giant snowball running down a mountain, gaining speed until the first kind of real breaking point came in minute 90. when Sam Rogers yellow card handbox in the box. At that point, I feel like everyone was kind of freezing. It was very blatantly a handball. It was a good penalty. And Christian Benteke skied it, which elation everywhere. I'm sure DJ was screaming. Alan was definitely screaming. I actually remember seeing Alan's reaction to this. And it was a great moment. Top of the world. That snowball dissipated. The fire is still holding. Go ahead, Tim.
I just can't. I still don't know what Benteke's thoughts were about what he was trying to do with that, because it sails over Brady's net. It wasn't really like a looping ball where he was like trying to catch him with like a weird, like kind of like baseball type thing. But it also didn't have a lot of power or intensity on it. So I don't know. Like I heard a couple of players saying some things about Soldier Field's field conditions, and it wasn't as visible on the broadcast, but in person you could definitely see that the Bears had been playing on that same grass, because there were still, like, you could see where the end zone was with some orange paint. You could see the gridiron. And I don't know if like right by the penalty spot, there was like a divot or something he wasn't expecting, but you just don't think a guy like Benteke is going to hit a penalty that badly, like ever.
No, there's no way I thought Benteke was missing that penalty. And so Benteke misses the penalty. Alan, DJ, did you think that was the game? Did you think we had it in the bag after that missed PK?
I just want to point out Benteke tried to do a Diana Ross.
What does that mean? I don't get that reference. Am I showing my lack of age? Am I showing my lack of age with that reference?
I know who Diana Ross is. I don't understand what you mean by that in this case.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know.
Do you remember the 94 World Cup kick?
Oh, I wasn't
alive.
Yeah, I was not alive.
I've seen plenty of video of it. You should have seen it, Tim. You're older than I am. But no.
Yeah, DJ is the club historian. Yeah.
I'm the guy that if you ever need to wonder when the Summer Olympics were held in Spain, you can ask me. But
we're talking about the penalty miss, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
With Diana Ross, 1994 World Cup opening ceremony, she takes a penalty kick, supposed to score the goal and break the net open, revealing, typical opening ceremony stuff. Instead, she completely misses it.
I mean, but like, I don't know. I can't believe we're talking about a penalty that was missed in 1994. And I also thanks DJ. This is like, it's not unusual to see someone like throwing out the first pitch at a baseball game to not get it over the mound. And this is sort of in the same category of things. Diana Ross notably did not score 24 professional goals the year before. And Christian.
That's why I'm saying Christian Benteke was doing a Diana Ross impression.
I still don't know who Diana Ross is, but I do know who Christian Benteke is.
She's a musician. You would recognize some of her music.
I'm sure. I do know how I felt after that penalty miss. Alan, did you think we were going to win after that miss from Benteke?
Bold move, assuming that we haven't made Alan scream inside with the music teacher and him being like, Diana Ross, you don't know who he is?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Actually, if he's a musician, Alan's been oddly quiet about that. Good point.
I'm just thinking about what you were asking me about, like essentially leading up to the next event, because I literally got an Apple Sports news notification about DC saved at the dying. It's like, yeah, part of me thought that this is too good to be true. And my rule is don't say anything until the final whistle. And I was trying to keep to that, but unfortunately I think something broke, and gosh darn it.
And of course, this all culminated, if that's a word, I think it is, with the he who should not be named name, Jacob Muriel. Last kick of the game, off a corner kick, scores a bicycle kick from the heavens that loops over Brady and equalizes at the death. I know Brady said that he just kind of watched that one go over him. It was a little too high. It was like a perfect moment for this 20-year-old striker off the bench. That was really a bummer, wasn't it, boys?
I mean, at the end of the day, I'd rather that happen than the turnovers that happened against Columbus. But you can't stop. Like, there are certain goals that you can do everything, but just because the grace of the soccer gods, they decide, okay, this is going to work. And that was one of them. It is very
Jacob Morel,
rare.
I don't think is ever going to score off a bicycle kick again in his life.
Yeah.
He had one in him, and that one happened to happen against the Fire on Saturday. Like that's the way it is.
The irony too. Funny story actually. Tim spoiled that for me.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Way to spoil it for DJ.
Tim asked me when the last time the Fire won their home game, their home opener was. The answer is 2017. And then 5 seconds after asking me, he said, "Never mind."
And I guess I was ahead of the broadcast. I'm sorry. But by the way, for the record, DJ was faster than the there's like a stats computer that, obviously a person has to access it, but a team staffer was going to refer to when somebody said, "Hey, when was the last time the Fire won a home opener?" And I couldn't remember off the top of my head. And my gut was saying 2017, but I'm like, who would know? And so I just messaged DJ, and he gave me the definitive answer before the guy with the stats computer could get to it. So props to him for that.
Only reason I know that is because pretty much every time the Fire win their home game, they go to the playoffs.
Dang. Wow. So all in all, Alan,
you just casually drop that in there. That's it's like just casually murdering somebody.
Quote that one's Philly super fan. Well, the season is over.
DJ knows all. He has somehow accurately predicted every single year the Fire is going to make the playoffs based on the home opener, which is really scary. But Alan, I'm curious. After that goal goes in, 2-2 draw. Is it a good loss, or did it feel like a loss? Was it a good draw, bad draw? What was your post game feeling? I know you tweeted on MIR 97 pods, but I want to hear it in the flesh.
Is Chicago gonna Chicago? That's my 3 words. It's just felt like this team, and really the whole city with this, has this thing that we exist only for the other team to get highlight reels, and this was one. As I mentioned, like literally a few seconds ago, I got the pop-up notification about the goal. It's going to definitely be the goal of the match day. It's going to be everywhere, essentially. That as I think DJ said, it's better than what happened against Columbus, where we just basically shot ourselves in the foot 3 times. This just felt like essentially what was mentioned, the soccer gods giving him his once in a lifetime bicycle kick, essentially. And it just so happened to be against us. So Chicago gonna Chicago. And I'm hoping that when we come back to Soldier Field, that won't be the case. And it'll also hopefully be, fingers crossed, a little bit warmer.
So hopefully, after the game, Greg Berhalter said that it was just unfortunate that that's the way that it ended for Brady. He said, other than that, which he was kind of an unstoppable goal. That's not an exact quote, but he called it, this isn't a quote, a man of the match type performance from Brady. And I think that that's true. And I think one of the questions going into this season was Brady going to rebound? Because he put together fantastic numbers in his first season as a starter in 2023, then regressed in 2024 in most statistical categories and stuff. I didn't think that was on him. I thought that was system. He looked like the Chris Brady of 2023 last night. There's still some issues, like he was still playing out of the back a little bit uncomfortably, not as good with his feet as I think Berhalter would like for him to be. I mean, we know, Zach Steffen was sort of stayed in the USMNT lineup for a lot longer than I think we'd expect because of his ability to do that. And still, like, I think that we're seeing what we need from Brady, and that was refreshing. It just is unfortunate that he couldn't get that win afterwards.
Yeah, his shot blocking ability, especially in those last 15 minutes, were elite level, and you could see the potential. And it was after the game, I remember seeing his reaction as he came over to the fans to say hi, and visibly unhappy about it, which is completely understandable after an all-star 15-minute performance. And it's good because I feel like, again, in the Columbus game, he didn't really show that shot blocking and capabilities as much. Still has a lot to learn. He's how old is he? 21 still? I feel like he's been 21 for 5 years ish.
He certainly seemed like he's like 27 or 28 that entire time.
Right.
He's a very mature guy. And actually, big credit to him because he spoke to reporters after the game. Despite the sort of like heartbreaking last kick goal that the team conceded, he said he didn't get a chance he didn't see it until late, and that was part of his positioning on it and just with where the ball was moving because it did go across his goal. But I think a lot of players of any age would not want to stick around and talk to reporters, and he did. He did throughout all of 2024, 2023, regardless of what the results were. So, props to him for that.
Yeah, he's a class guy, and we're very grateful to have him both as a reporter or someone to talk to as a reporter and as a fan to watch, because he's really, really great. Final thoughts, DC Fire. Are there any players that stood out to you as cementing their pathway into the 18? Or are there any performances that you feel like are notably unworthy of pursuing a pathway to the 18? For one, and the reason I asked this question is I just really want to talk about Sam Williams for one more minute. This is a guy I knew nothing about. He came into that midfield number 57, I believe, and played really, really well. He was a little wizard out there. And I just think it's really fun to see a player that came from Fire 2, first MLS start, came from New York Red Bulls 2, first Fire start, and cement himself into the midfield. Well, 19-year-old, if I remember correctly, came in there and kind of bossed it up. I'm curious. Any other players like that really gave you guys the chills?
I thought he was okay. I don't think he has as hell of a game as you did. I think that, he certainly will be a core part of the Fire 2 team now. I'm confident because they haven't, had their first game yet. And I think maybe is the kind of guy that you could think could get a first team deal down the road. I thought Sergio Orahel looked stable. Like I said, I think the midfield, partly because of the limited tools and not wanting to ask them to play the full system, really was what cost the Fire a win in this game. If they had been able to perform the way that I think Berhalter wants to see his midfields perform, it would have been a different result. But I think that we have to give credit. Zinkernagel, I thought, didn't look great in his first game. Looked very good in a lot like stretches of this game, and that improvement, I think it shows why he was brought into the team.
I want to bounce off of that front line of Kuipers, Bamba, Zinkernagel, because we've been mentioning since Kuipers joined, like that support that he needs. Like, how is he going to score goals? He needs that support, and Bamba does really well in terms of getting into that final third, getting the box, providing some sort of chance. Zinkernagel as well. I also want to give a shout out to Bald Greatness Andrew Gutman, who also did a fairly good job on the wing. Same thing, Jonathan Dean. So I think our front line plus those wing backs, just the movement on the sides, it felt great. Of course, that, like you mentioned, the midfield isn't stable yet, and the back line isn't what it's supposed to be just yet. So I feel like once the pieces sort of fall in, once Greg also has one or two more transfer windows, the pieces will really fall in.
That improvement will hopefully continue onto Saturday. Obviously, Fire 1 point through 2 games. They now going on a three-game road trip. Dallas, Toronto, then Vancouver. And it starts off in Frisco, Texas this Saturday against a decent FC Dallas team. This is the first time the Fire are traveling to Dallas since 2018, and the first time they hope to win there since 2013. Last week, so yesterday, the day before we were recording this, Dallas goes to Colorado and gets a 3-3 draw, which is all in all a decent result from them. They went down 2-0 in the 39th minute, and similar to the Fire on Saturday, crawled back to get a result with a few equalizers here and there. The key players for the Dallas, we know the headliner, Lucho Acosta, one-time MLS MVP, who joined just a few weeks ago from Columbus. He scored his first goal against Colorado yesterday. And then on top, their version of Hugo Kuipers, former Benfica striker Peter Musa, who currently has 2 goals and 2 assists this season, off to a hot start. There's a lot of questions about the Fire going into match day 3. The first one, injuries. Who's going to be coming back? Will Kuipers be ready to go for full 90? Will Pineda be possibly ready to start, although Guti will most likely be making another appearance? The second one, Fire 2, and I think the one that's the most interesting, do we see more movement? With Osorio and Sam Williams both making introductions into match day 2, that means they can only play 1 game left, like Tim alluded to earlier. And if they play any more games, then they are not allowed to be called up to the senior team for the rest of the season. Will that open the pathway for guys like Claudio Cassano or Diego Konix, who are guys in Fire 2 that have been training with the first team in various capacities throughout the season? And what changes need to happen in the starting 11 Guti will be back, like I mentioned earlier. The other injuries are still unknown. And will we be able to finally get those first team back players and start to build up that experience and limit the sloppiness we've had over the last few days? Alan, how are we feeling about Dallas going into match day 3?
Well, the thing that I'm just feeling better about is the fact that Guti is back. Now, first of all, I feel like Guti was done absolutely dirty by being, he was in the 11 of the match day from week 1. They showed off so much. MLS promoted him so much, and they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're suspended." So I think he's back, and he'll be a little revenge tour for him for having such a great first game and then all of a sudden being given the boot. It'll definitely reinforce that midfield. So, and I think some of the Fire players, especially from the past, will remember that this is the Brimstone Cup. This is a little tournament thing, cup tournament we have between DC and the Fire. The last time we played against Dallas, it was a draw, so we kept on to the Brimstone Cup. So that baby should stay in Chicago.
Hopefully. It's a beautiful cup. It was actually at the South Lot yesterday. I got to touch it, which made me feel really good. Tim, great to see you. Really interested. We spent a couple minutes talking about injuries and who's going to be ready to come back come FC Dallas on Saturday. Are there any inklings or anything that Greg's saying that'll share some insight onto whether or not we're going to get some more first team players back into the fold or not?
So we know that, Gutierrez, which is the 1 game suspension. I think other than that, we're not as aware. It seems like some of the players are getting closer. I would guess it probably will be a couple of weeks before Kwame is back, but I could be wrong about this. Part of this comes down to the training staff, but part of it's also a coach's preference about who, how ready they think that ready is. There is some good news, though. I think that Zinkernagel is getting back to full strength, and Hugo Kuiper said that he felt like he was ready to go a full 90, but it was just kind of a precaution that he wasn't able to do it this one. So that could be a big difference maker. Now, I think that we want to see as many of these guys back as quickly as possible. Pareba's close to a season-ending injury. It's not officially a season-ending injury yet. I don't think the team will use that designation on him just for roster reasons. And Gasper will be out, probably for at least the rest of March and in through April. So Gutman better take care of himself. And, the everyone else, I think, is somewhere in between where it's going to be a matter of a couple of weeks, but we don't yet have an indication of anyone really being that close to being ready. We'll learn more in training this week. Normally, you'll see guys training throughout the week if they're going to be ready to play on Saturday. Sometimes it's a last-minute thing. But if people aren't training by, say, Thursday or Friday, then we'll know that it's not really time for them to, that they're not going to be likely to be in the 18 come Saturday.
We'll have to wait and see. I think, like Tim mentioned, it's not going to be a full starting 11. We're not going to get all the juice back, all the first teamers back. But hopefully it's a step in the right direction, and it's a winnable game against a decent DC team. We'll see how the boys are able to compete. Real quick, before we wrap it out, predictions. Second away game of the season. First time in Frisco since 2018. DJ, predictions, who scores?
I'm going to say it's a 2-2 game. I'm just going to say Kuipers gets another goal, and I think Guti gets goal.
Alan.
I was thinking in a very similar vein for some reason, like 2-2 with a Kuipers Guti goal. I feel like Lucho Acosta, I feel like always these players come back to haunt us for some reason. He might get a goal into. I'm not sure who gets the other DC goal. Hopefully it's not through error, but I feel like 2-2, but maybe the Fire could squeeze like a 2-1 or even a 3-2.
Em, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably a 2-2. That felt right for this. It could be like the game in Colorado was absolutely crazy that FC Dallas played in their last time. Ended up ending up in a 3-3 draw. Peter Musa, I think, was okay last season, but under the new coach that was brought in formerly, he had time with FC Dallas too, or I guess North Texas SC, their reserve team. but played was the head coach of New Mexico United, and he played a more possession-based system than they did last year, and it looks like he's bringing that over to Dallas. It makes for an interesting kind of game. It'll be a good challenge for the Fire, I think. They have a lot of high-end attacking talent. Their center backs, though, they will give you time and space, and they will give Bamba time and space. So I think Bamba gets his first MLS goal on Saturday.
Ooh.
I will keep predicting Jonathan Bamba gets his first MLS goal until he gets his first MLS goal. And although I don't want to be stale and boring, my thoughts going into this was also 2-2. I think this is the draw of the three-game road trip. I think they are going to perform better when they go to the Canadian teams. And I was saying 2-2, Jonathan Bamba with 1. I'll go Hugo Kuipers getting on the score sheet, playing a full 90. On the flip side, I think, like Alan mentioned, Lucho Acosta is a guy that likes to haunt us. He'll get on the scoreboard. And then my other pick is actually Anderson Julio, who I rate really highly. He played at Quito for a long time. I actually met him in Quito when I was in Ecuador, not even 2 years ago, which is really cool. So I'm kind of a fan favorite of him. Also, really talented player. Good to see him back in the league.
And he's looked really good for Dallas so far this year. He's one of those names that you never heard of before they really make it to MLS, and they make it to MLS. Same thing with Lucho Acosta, right? He was on no one's radar, and now we know what a difference maker he can be in that league. And I think that Julio is not that same tier of player, but he's in a tier just underneath it, but can really be a big difference maker.
Yeah, big time talent. Played at Salt Lake for 4 years before making the switch over to Dallas. And he's a guy I have who's going to put up, 10, 12 goals this season on a talented front four for FC Dallas. But I think it'll be a solid middle of the road tie. And then obviously they'll have to get some results when they go up to Canada. So we'll have to wait and see. Should be a fun one. FC Dallas, Brimstone Cup on the line. Always a fun one for the fans because I know this trophy means a lot to certain members of our community. And we'll be excited to see what's...
Do we know if the Brimstone Cup, because the Fire retained it after the 0-0 draw in 2022 that happened at Soldier Field, but is there an away goal tool for the Brimstone Cup or something? I don't think this came up because the teams would face each other every year through 2019.
I don't know. That's a great question.
Check with Section 8.
We'll have to wait and see. It's a beautiful trophy. Like I said, got to touch it. It feels like real metal, and we want to keep it. I don't know the last time DJ, you might know this. Have we ever kept the Brimstone Cup, or has it gone back and forth pretty much the whole time?
That I actually don't know. I know the Fire have had it, of course, since I think 2019. So, but I'm not sure when the last time Dallas had it was.
It feels good to end the podcast on stumping DJ at a fact about Chicago Fire history. So before we wrap out, where can we find everyone on social, starting with Mr. Tim?
Yeah, T-Hotzi on Blue Sky and Sing_Electric on Twitter.
DJ?
DJH2036 on Twitter.
Mr. Poll with a Goal?
Well, exactly. Poll with the Goal 69 on Twitter, or the Poll with the Goal 127 on Insta.
And you could find me at mshabes, MSHABES on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other things are out there. It's probably mshabes too. And of course,
you can find all of us at MIR97 as well as MIR97 Pods.
Yeah, MIR97 Pods on the website as well, or follow us on Blue Sky or Twitter, because we're going to have a lot of great content coming out this week, including the Fire's Endeavor performance in a ribbon cutting ceremony. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say, is happening this week. So we should have some good looks from that. And I'm excited for it, and we're excited to be able to bring that to people.
Whoop, whoop.
And a special thank you to all of those who joined last Thursday for Hot Takes. We'll have another one coming out at the end of March. So keep your eye out for that. A lot going on in Fireland, a lot of content churned out by the writing team, by the audio team here at MIR97. And we're excited for you to join along the journey. So thanks for listening. Your support is unappreciated. And of course, a special shout out to Austin Meyer, the wonderful audio producer behind all of these podcasts for the past 3 years. You're an absolute legend. Thank you for dealing with all of our crap. And we will see you next Sunday when we start talking FC Dallas and onwards. Come on, you men in red. See you guys.
Come on, you men in red.